Holy One, as we turn this text, as we search in it words for the living of these days, may my words be true to your dream. Amen. So I know normally for me that whenever I hear the opening verse of this text, which as I told our Midrash group 10 days ago was one that we had at our wedding, so I am usually positively disposed towards it. Those words, I am the true vine, God is my father, the vineyard keeper. Not only am I transported to our wedding day, but also sensually to here, the vineyards of Alsace. It's where I spent some time during my graduate studies and where I got to teach summer school. Lucky me. There are sun-drenched rows of vines, gnarly rootstock pushing up from sandy, parched ground, producing unimaginably lush leaves and hanging heavy beneath, ripening slowly in the long, warm, late fall days. All this big, juicy, fruitful abundance. So how can this text be anything other than good news? Abide in me, stay grafted in me, I'll abide in you, and all will be well. Except you heard it, didn't you? Those bits in there about pruning, about being cut off and cast aside and burned on a fire. Darn it, that's the bit that resonates this year. After 14 months of lockdown, of 2-meter distancing, of work and travel restrictions, after 14 months of not being able to see or touch or be touched by family, to hug friends, to gather at long tables in our community hall, even to gather to grieve friends in our sanctuary. We are not really feeling grafted to the vine, are we? In fact, and I hope that that is a broadly inclusive we are feeling the opposite. Pruned, cut off, cast aside. And more, some of us, or people that we know and love, and countless others who are worn down and spent and withered by the pressures of work, by close calls with COVID, those who have lost family to this disease, those who have lost livelihood, those who have lost their mental health, lost hope of any sort of future, those are the ones who can feel the heat of the vine grower's bonfire. And if we push the horizon out farther still, we can say that what we're living through right now feels like this global pruning. It's as if the lush leaves have been cut right back to expose fissures in the rootstock of our society. Infection, other than COVID, have blanketed the vine and the vineyard of human and even planetary community, exposing healthcare systems that are fundamentally underfunded. Children who are being sent to crowded, under-ventilated schools for lack of safe daytime care, while we keep the economy open, far too often propped up on the backs of underpaid or uninsured workers who are forced to work while sick or exposed. Self-serving politics appears to be choking off these transnational attempts that people are making to share vaccines and treatments with the poorest and the hardest hit, whether that means in the real ghettos of Canada's cities, or whether that means entire nations who have little influence in those global halls of power. And while we are humans hunkering down, there's still an anguished planet. It seems we're leaving teenagers to cry alone on Earth's behalf while politicians make promises they don't keep. We feel these days like useless branches, ungrafted, unable to work together for Earth's healing and our own. We look and feel for all the world like a wintered vine stalk that's been shorn to the nub, cruciform against a frozen landscape. And we ask, can anything come of this global pruning? Will the vine survive it? Will we? Or are we for the fire? Norman knows I was struggling about how to get out of that well of despair when I spent some time yesterday reading Rebecca Solnit in her graphically entitled book, A Paradise Built in Hell: Extraordinary Communities That Arise in Disaster. So Solnit has her own way of retelling this gospel metaphor that there is a true vine worth being grafted to, and that there is a future beyond the pruning, something that she calls, as would I and as would Jesus, the beloved community. So Solnit, having examined multiple macro disasters, beginning with the San Francisco earthquake of 1906 all the way through to Hurricane Katrina, and she passes by way of the Halifax explosion, Chernobyl, our own Montreal ice storm, and 9/11. What she does is she points to a human story that hinges on what it is we believe. So one trajectory of the story, one vine, if you will, is this choking narrative of fear that is evangelized by self-interested, xenophobic, minority elitist politics in cahoots with the peddlers of tabloid-selling false narratives of human depravity. This anti-gospel would have us be hoodwinked into believing that God's dream, as we call it, the hope of beloved community, is all make-believe, unachievable, and frankly even dangerous. That's that one. But Solnit also discovers that there is another, often quieter compilation of small narratives that collectively create a veritable vineyard. And this multi-narrative, likewise, is founded in belief. But this time the belief is in the intrinsic goodness and worth of humanity and of creation. And so it grows like lush green roots from the gnarled, twisted skeletons of the hellish moments that she was studying, all those natural disasters and human ones that she collectively calls the gates of hell. This narrative is expressed in repeated acts and habits of genuine, generous, courageous altruism. So if we pair her narrative with our gospel for today, she has witnessed the true vine that is rooted in our creation in God's image. It is grafted into the incarnate life of the beloved. And yeah, it is pruned and shaped by the dream of God to be lived on earth where it is most needed, right now, at this year's gates of hell. Now, often these branches of the vine, these purposeful acts of communitarian altruism, they work in defiance of elitist coercion. They work to do that to protect the weakest and to support the means, whether that be individual or systemic, for purposeful, meaningful work together. Just to give a couple of examples that she gives in her book. The people who got in their boats during Hurricane Katrina to rescue those that had been barricaded in by the state and government forces, unable to leave the lower Ninth Ward. these acts, this vine, is focused on society's healing, recovery, and fruitful future. But I want to go back to the pruning for a minute. What I said earlier is this global unveiling of the ugly, but also the often hidden goodness. We may as well go there, right? And look, what has been pruned in this season of persistent viral anguish? What has been removed? What is being revealed? And for what future fruitfulness are we being pruned as individuals, as families, and as faith community, and collectively as humans within a planetary community? So Elizabeth Chown wrote on Friday, after watching the video that we shared with folk in the Friday update and on Facebook, and as I paraphrase her answer, what do we do to let God, the vine grower, prune away those things in our own personal practices so that we can grow shoots that will result in more fruitful growth personally? I think a lot of us have been doing that, paring things down to what matters. And as I think of the pandemic pruning impact on my family, it's helped me to see that there is a healthy rootstock from which new shoots will grow of togetherness, acceptance, abiding, and mutual support and encouragement. All the rest's been pruned away: wealth, houses, cars, trips. None of that matters. What abides is our love for one another. As I think about what's been cut away and revealed to us as a faith community in this pandemic time, we've pruned it all down to staying grafted to the vine through this weekly worship, and pruning our activities to focus on community through our congregational care clusters, to focus on compassion and on care, and to continue doing as best we can that work for justice, particularly for the vulnerable and othered people and creatures of our planet. So if as individuals and as families and faith communities, if this is what we're doing, when we do these, then what's going to happen globally? Community shoots will bear fruit and help to reshape local and regional and national and our global society. And it will align more closely to God's dream. And yes, there will be a cutting away of those choking false vines, those lying narratives of fear, the narratives of fragility and failure that are so patently false against the great witness of the tiny narratives to the opposite. So then, please, let us live believing, Jesus, that we are branches of this true vine, that we will survive this pruning, that we will heal the wounds, and in due season, born of resilience, compassion, and love, with which we are made in God's image, we will grow those new shoots that will shelter, and those shoots that will grow an abundance of fruit to replenish the earth. On that narrative, on this good gospel, I will stake my hope and my life, and I invite you to do the same. Amen.